What if everything you've been taught about confidence is a lie? What if chasing praise, stacking achievements, and posting success stories are actually making you weaker, not stronger? In a world obsessed with appearances, real confidence has become the quietest voice in the room, and the rarest. Imagine waking up tomorrow with zero fear of failure. No anxiety about what others think. No pressure to perform. Just a grounded sense of clarity and purpose. That's not fantasy. That's what the ancient Stoics mastered, and passed down through principles we've forgotten in the noise of modern life. True power doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering yourself. From knowing who you are, what matters, and why you do what you do. This isn't self-help fluff. It's a timeless code forged in hardship, lived by warriors, emperors, and philosophers who refused to let the chaos outside shake the peace within. In this video, we're diving into 12 Stoic lessons that will help you build unshakable confidence from the inside out. These aren't motivational tricks or temporary hacks. They're mental frameworks and daily practices used by the likes of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, reinterpreted for today's chaotic world. Each lesson is a step toward emotional clarity, mental resilience, and the kind of confidence that doesn't need to shout, because it already knows its worth. Let's begin. 1. Understand true self-confidence. In a world that constantly tells you to prove yourself, stand out, and be noticed, true confidence feels like a rare gem. We often confuse confidence with loudness, arrogance, or status, but the Stoics saw it differently, and much more powerfully. True self-confidence isn't about how others see you. It's not built on compliments, applause, or the number of likes and followers you collect. It's rooted deep within, in a place untouched by circumstances or opinions. That's where real confidence lives, not in the spotlight, but in your soul. When you think about what it means to be confident, what comes to mind? Is it someone speaking boldly in a meeting? Walking into a room like they own it? While those may look like confidence, they're often just surface-level performances. Stoicism teaches us that the strongest people don't always talk the most, boast the loudest, or shine the brightest. Instead, they carry a quiet fire, one that isn't shaken by rejection, criticism, or uncertainty. They are anchored, and that anchor is self-mastery. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, once said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." That's not just a quote, it's a roadmap. If you can't control your thoughts, your reactions, your emotions, then you'll always be at the mercy of the world around you. You'll rise and fall with every opinion, every failure, every unpredictable event. But if you learn to master what's within, nothing outside can break you. Think about it. How many times have you felt unsure of yourself simply because someone didn't approve of your actions or didn't validate your worth? How often have you hesitated to act, speak, or show up, out of fear that you weren't good enough? These moments feel small, but they carry heavy weight. And they all come from the same place, giving your power away to something you cannot control. The Stoics ask you to take that power back. Confidence, they say, comes from clarity, from knowing who you are and choosing to act in line with that truth. No matter what the world says. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not a motivational slogan. That's a challenge. A reminder that you don't have to wait for approval or wait for things to go right to feel worthy. You already are. You just have to own it. Let's take a moment to reflect. When was the last time you felt truly confident? Was it when you succeeded? Or was it when you stayed true to yourself in the face of failure, discomfort, or pressure? Often, it's the second one, because deep down, we know it's not about the outcome. It's about the intention, the effort, and the integrity behind our actions. This kind of confidence, the Stoic kind, is unshakable because it's independent. It doesn't collapse under failure or inflate under praise. It simply is. It exists because you've taken the time to understand yourself. You've faced your fears, acknowledged your flaws, and chosen to act with purpose anyway. You're not chasing perfection. You're choosing presence. You're not seeking permission. You're embracing conviction. And one of the most powerful tools to nurture this kind of inner strength is self-reflection. The Stoics were relentless in their practice of reflection, not to judge themselves, but to understand, what did I do today? What did I do well? Where did I fall short? How can I grow from this? This isn't self-criticism, it's self-alignment, and when done consistently, it becomes a mirror, one that reflects not just who you are, but who you're becoming. Now, confidence doesn't mean you'll never feel fear or doubt. It means those feelings won't dictate your direction. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can doubt yourself and still speak with conviction. Because real confidence isn't about eliminating insecurity. It's about not letting it define you. You're not your fear. You're the one choosing how to respond to it. Stoicism also invites us to redefine failure. In today's world, we're often terrified of getting things wrong. But the Stoics saw failure as essential, a teacher, not a threat. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Read that again. It's not the difficulty that stops us, it's our hesitation, our fear of looking foolish. But what if we embraced mistakes as fuel? What if we stopped seeing them as proof that we're not enough, and started seeing them as proof that we're trying, evolving, and learning? Take Edison, for example. Thousands of attempts, thousands of failures, all to invent the light bulb. He didn't quit. He didn't take those missteps as proof that he was incapable. Instead, he said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's resilience. That's Stoicism in action. And that's real confidence. The kind that isn't afraid of falling because it knows how to rise. To understand true self-confidence is to shift your focus from what you can't control to what you can. You can't control how others see you. You can't guarantee success, but you can control your effort. You can choose your mindset. You can commit to living by your values every single day, no matter what the world throws at you. That's where strength is born. That's how unshakable confidence is built. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, in the silence, in the honest moments where you choose yourself. So if you're struggling to feel confident right now, pause, look inward, not to fix yourself, but to meet yourself. Ask, what do I value? What kind of person do I want to be? Even when things go wrong, what can I do right now that reflects the best in me? Because that's what true confidence is. It's not loud. It's not boastful. It's not waiting for applause. It's a quiet voice that says, "This is who I am, and I stand by it." Not because the world says I should, but because I choose to. That choice, made again and again, is what sets you free. 2. Know and live according to your personal beliefs. In a world that constantly shouts what you should be, how you should act, and what success is supposed to look like, there's something powerful, almost revolutionary, about knowing exactly who you are and living by it. Stoicism doesn't ask you to fit in. It invites you to stand tall, grounded in your values, no matter how strong the wind blows. Because when you truly know your beliefs, and you have the courage to live according to them, confidence becomes something you don't chase. It becomes something you embody. Let's get honest. How many times have you felt lost or unsettled? Not because of what you were doing, but because it didn't feel like you. Maybe you said yes when everything inside screamed no. Maybe you followed a path because it impressed others, even though it never lit a fire in your soul. That kind of dissonance, when your actions don't match your values, is the fastest way to drain your self-confidence. You begin to question your worth, not because you're weak, but because you're disconnected from what truly matters to you. Epictetus gave us a line that hits hard: know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. It's not just philosophy, it's a foundation. Before you worry about appearances, reputation, or opinions, stop and ask, what do I believe in? What matters to me, even when no one is watching? Because without that clarity, you'll drift. You'll end up living someone else's life, chasing someone else's dreams, and losing yourself in the process. Confidence grows in clarity. It grows in the quiet conviction that you're living by your own compass. And that compass, your personal beliefs, is what separates authentic strength from a performance. When you live by what you deeply value, your self-respect grows. You stop needing external applause, because you've already given yourself approval. That's not arrogance, that's integrity. And make no mistake, living by your beliefs isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's often the harder road. It means turning down the flashy opportunity because it compromises your ethics. It means standing alone when the crowd cheers for something you can't support. It means making peace with disapproval, because your peace matters more than being liked. But here's the truth. Every time you make that choice, your confidence takes root. It deepens. It hardens. It becomes real. Imagine someone who lives this way, not recklessly, but intentionally. They don't waver every time someone raises an eyebrow. They don't flip their identity based on trends or approval. Instead, they move through life with quiet strength. You can feel it in the way they speak, the way they choose, the way they show up, not perfect, but real. That's the kind of person Stoicism helps you become. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And your thoughts? They're shaped by your beliefs. If your beliefs are built on depth, compassion, purpose, your actions will reflect that. But if you build your life around shallow goals or borrowed ideals, your confidence will always feel fragile, like glass waiting to break under the pressure of judgment. Let's bring this down to earth. Picture someone who values simplicity and sustainability. They choose to live in a small apartment, shop consciously, and prioritize meaningful work over high-paying, high-stress jobs. Friends and family might not understand. They might laugh, criticize, or pressure them to upgrade. But because this person is rooted in their beliefs, they don't waver. They don't need to defend their lifestyle with excuses. Their confidence comes from the fact that they're living in alignment, not with the world's expectations, but with their truth. That's not resistance. That's freedom. And it doesn't take grand gestures to live by your beliefs. Confidence is built in the small moments. Choosing honesty in a difficult conversation. Being kind when anger would be easier. Saying no when something violates your peace. These aren't just actions. They're declarations. They say, "This is who I am. And I'm not here to impress, I'm here to live true." Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Judgment. You will be judged, criticized, misunderstood. That's part of the price for authenticity. But Stoicism teaches you to rise above it, not through defiance, but through inner calm. Seneca said, "As long as you know you are living according to your principles, don't let criticism shake you." That's your shield. Not pride, not ego, but clarity. When you're solid inside, no voice outside can shake you. And if you're not sure what you believe in yet, that's okay. This isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions. What matters to you when no one is looking? What are you willing to stand for, even when it costs you something? What kind of person do you want to be? Not in theory, but in action? To discover your values, look at what moves you. What makes you angry, not on the surface, but in your core? What brings you peace? What makes you proud of yourself at the end of a hard day? These are your signposts. Follow them. Build your beliefs not from noise, but from soul, and revisit them often, because as you grow, your understanding of them deepens. One of the most powerful practices the Stoics used to stay aligned was journaling. Marcus Aurelius filled pages with thoughts, reminders, and corrections, not for show, but to stay honest. That's the essence of this lesson. Be brutally honest with yourself. Not harsh, honest. Are your actions reflecting your beliefs? Are your choices aligned with your purpose? If not, adjust. Not because you're broken, but because you're committed to growing. Living by your beliefs isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about choosing integrity even when it's quiet, invisible, or thankless. And every time you do, you strengthen the voice inside that says, "You are enough. You are grounded. You are free." That voice, that quiet, steady voice, is confidence. Not because the world gave it to you, but because you chose to live by what matters. That's the kind of confidence Stoicism teaches. Not flashy, not loud, but rooted, powerful, enduring. When you know your values, and you live them with courage, you become a force the world can't shake. Not because it won't try, but because you've already decided who you are. And there is no storm stronger than that. 3. Focus on what truly matters. In a world that thrives on noise, speed, and endless comparison, finding peace feels like chasing a shadow. We wake up to pings, scroll through chaos, and fall asleep mentally exhausted by things that often don't even matter. But what if confidence, clarity, and calm all come down to one simple Stoic truth? Focus only on what truly matters. Not what screams the loudest, not what dazzles, but what actually brings meaning, alignment, and depth to your life. This isn't just philosophy. It's a way out of the overwhelm, and into a life you can actually feel proud of living. Stoicism teaches that our power lies in what we choose to give attention to. Every day, you're presented with distractions, headlines, opinions, trends, people chasing goals that don't belong to them. If you're not careful, you start chasing them too. But here's the catch. When you give your energy to everything, you end up with nothing. Nothing grounded, Nothing lasting, just motion without meaning. That's why the Stoics remind us again and again, slow down. Ask yourself, is this essential? Marcus Aurelius said, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That question is gold. It cuts through the noise. It silences the drama, and it forces you to return to what matters, your values, your goals, your peace. Because when you're constantly distracted by things that don't serve you, your confidence takes the hit. You start doubting, hesitating, spiraling. But when you focus on what aligns with your purpose, you become solid, intentional, unshakable. Think about how much time is lost to worrying about other people's opinions, to comparing your progress with someone else's highlight reel, to chasing money, status, or validation that, even when you catch it, leaves you emptier than before. Confidence doesn't grow in that chaos. It grows in stillness, in clarity, in focusing your time and energy on what reflects your truth, not the world's noise. Epicurus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That's Stoicism in its purest form. Not about giving everything up, but about wanting less, wanting better, wanting deeper. When you stop craving what you can't control, you free yourself to focus on what you can, your mindset, your effort, your response to life's challenges. That's where real confidence lives. Not in the outcome, but in the clarity of your direction. Let's take this idea into real life. Imagine you're building something, your career, your health, a meaningful relationship. Along the way, there are temptations to quit, to chase something easier, or to compare your journey with someone who seems faster. But you pause, you zoom out, you ask, what matters to me? What do I want this to mean? Suddenly, the noise fades, the doubt softens, and you return to your path, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. That's the beauty of focusing on what truly matters. It reconnects you with intention. When you live with intention, you stop drifting, you stop reacting, and you start moving with purpose. Every action becomes a brick in a foundation of real confidence, not the kind that needs applause, but the kind that stands even when no one's watching. The Stoics also taught us the discipline of mental boundaries. You can't control everything, you were never meant to. But you can control your focus. You can train your attention like a muscle. You can catch yourself when your mind spirals into regret, comparison, or fear, and you can bring it back to the present, to your breath, to the one thing that actually needs your energy right now. That's power. That's presence. That's Stoicism. It's easy to think that confidence comes from achievement, from doing more, but confidence often comes from subtracting, from letting go of the distractions, the expectations, the unnecessary. When you simplify your mental world, your inner world strengthens. Suddenly, you have space to think clearly, to act with courage, to breathe without pressure. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." That hits hard. Time is your most valuable currency, and focusing on what truly matters is the only way to spend it wisely. When you look back at your life, what will you be proud of? The likes you collected, or the relationships you nurtured? The hours spent overthinking, or the risks you took in the name of purpose? The superficial success, or the peace you built within? This is where confidence blooms. Not from noise, but from knowing what you stand for, knowing where your effort is going, and knowing what you're willing to let go of. Confidence isn't about knowing everything, It's about knowing what you care about and giving it your full attention. Let's talk about digital distraction. One of the greatest threats to confidence today isn't failure, it's mental clutter. It's the endless scrolling, the flood of other people's opinions, the fear of missing out. The more scattered your attention becomes, the less rooted you feel. And the less rooted you feel, the more you question your worth. The solution isn't to escape the world. It's to reclaim your focus, to choose where your eyes land, what your mind absorbs, and where your energy flows. That choice is yours. Every day, mindfulness becomes your shield here. When you live with awareness, you start catching yourself. You notice when your thoughts drift to worry or jealousy. You notice when your goals are being hijacked by trends. And in that moment, you choose again, you realign, and with each realignment, your confidence grows, not because everything is perfect, but because you're present, you're awake, you're steering the wheel of your own life. Another key? Letting go of control over things you can't influence. You can't control how someone reacts. You can't control the outcome of every decision, but you can control how you show up. You can control how you prepare, how you speak, how you carry yourself. And when your focus lives in that space, the space of personal responsibility, you feel powerful. Not because you control the world, but because you control you. And when life throws setbacks your way, which it inevitably will, your focus will determine how you rise. If you dwell on blame, you sink. If you fixate on outcomes, you freeze. But if you return your attention to effort, to growth, to action, you rise. Slowly, steadily, with grace. That's Stoic confidence. That's where true strength reveals itself. At the end of the day, confidence isn't a loud declaration. It's a quiet alignment. It's a clear yes to what matters, and an unapologetic no to what doesn't. It's a life curated not for approval, but for meaning. And when you start living that way, you don't need to prove anything. You already know who you are. And no noise in the world can drown out that clarity. 4. Practice self-reflection. In a fast-moving world that constantly demands your attention, notifications, deadlines, conversations, expectations, it's easy to lose sight of who you really are. We spend our days reacting, adapting, and pushing forward. But the Stoics knew something that many people today have forgotten. Growth doesn't come from constantly doing. It comes from pausing, looking inward, asking yourself the questions that no one else can answer for you. This is the power of self-reflection, not a luxury, not a soft practice, but a daily discipline that forges unshakable clarity, confidence, and character. Imagine ending your day not by numbing yourself with distraction, but by facing your own mind like a mirror. What did I do today that I'm proud of? Where did I fall short? How did I treat others? Did I live according to what I say I believe in? These aren't judgments, they're checkpoints. And through them, you build the most powerful habit a human being can have: knowing yourself. Because when you truly know yourself, your strengths, your blind spots, your tendencies, you gain the ability to direct your life with purpose rather than being pulled by impulse. Seneca once wrote, "We should every night call ourselves to account." And he meant it. He practiced it. This wasn't a moment of guilt or self-punishment. It was a moment of ownership. You sit with your experiences, not to relive them, but to learn from them. You shine a light on the areas you avoided. You acknowledge the progress you've made. You course correct with honesty and compassion. That's how confidence grows, not from perfection, but from deep alignment between who you are and how you live. Let's be real. It takes courage to look inward. Most people avoid it. It's easier to distract ourselves, to pretend everything's fine, to blame the world. But self-reflection asks you to slow down and be brutally honest, not harsh, but clear. It asks, did you live today the way you want to be remembered? And if not, that's not failure. That's a lesson. That's feedback. That's fuel. You begin to realize that every day is a vote for the person you're becoming. And when you take time to reflect, you cast those votes consciously, not carelessly. Think about how powerful this is. Confidence doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from being connected to the truth of who you are and where you're going. When you reflect daily, you track your growth in real time. You catch your patterns. You understand your triggers. You reinforce your values. It's like tuning an instrument, your mind, your actions, your words. They all begin to harmonize. And people can feel it. That quiet clarity becomes your presence, your grounding, your power. One of the most effective ways to practice self-reflection is through journaling. It's not about writing perfectly. It's not about creating a masterpiece. It's about showing up for yourself on the page. You write to reveal what's under the surface. You write to hold yourself accountable. And you write to remember. To remember what matters, what you're aiming for, what you promised yourself when no one else was watching. This simple practice, done consistently, becomes a lifeline, a personal dialogue between who you are and who you're becoming. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man of his time, wrote his reflections in private, never intending for them to be published. And yet, those very pages became his meditations, guiding his thoughts, decisions, and actions. His journal wasn't for the world. It was for his soul. He didn't journal because he was weak or unsure. He did it because he wanted to stay aligned with his core in a world full of temptation, chaos, and power. If a Roman emperor can reflect daily to stay grounded, what excuse do we really have? Now, let's be honest, reflection doesn't always feel comfortable. There will be moments when you recognize patterns you don't like, when you see your fear, your ego, your avoidance staring back at you. But here's the thing. What you acknowledge, you can change. What you avoid, you repeat. Self-reflection isn't about beating yourself up. It's about interrupting the patterns that no longer serve you. It's about creating space between stimulus and response, so you don't just react, but respond with wisdom. Let's say you had a tough conversation that didn't go well. Instead of replaying it on a loop or blaming the other person, reflection invites you to ask, what part did I play? Did I listen with presence? Was I defending or understanding? How can I do it better next time? That one moment of reflection could change how you show up in every future interaction. That's not theory, that's transformation. Over time, you begin to notice a powerful shift. You stop needing external validation. You stop waiting for circumstances to change. Why? Because your clarity is internal. Your compass is self-created. You begin to trust your own process because you've seen yourself evolve. Not from massive breakthroughs, but from daily awareness. You realize that strength isn't built by pretending to be unbreakable. It's built by facing the cracks and choosing to grow stronger through them. And this daily habit, this moment of inward attention, carries into everything. You walk into rooms differently. You handle failure with more grace. You make decisions faster. with more conviction, because you've trained yourself to be your own guide. The world doesn't shake you the way it used to because you've created stillness inside. You don't spiral into guilt or regret as easily because you know how to course correct. You don't chase validation because you've already earned your own respect. And when you live that way, something remarkable happens. You start respecting others more. You become more patient, more understanding, more empathetic, because the more you reflect on your own imperfections, the more compassion you have for the imperfections in others. That's the unexpected gift of self-reflection. It doesn't just make you better. It makes the world around you better, because you're no longer adding noise. You're bringing clarity. You're bringing intention. At the end of the day, practicing self-reflection isn't about finding all the answers. It's about staying in the habit of asking the right questions. It's about showing up with curiosity instead of judgment. It's about being willing to sit with discomfort in service of something greater, a life of depth, direction, and dignity. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, take a few moments, not because it's trendy, not because a book told you to, but because your future self is shaped by what you do with your thoughts today. Grab a pen, sit with your truth, and begin the quiet, powerful work of coming home to yourself. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That's how you build not just confidence, but character. And from there, everything changes. 5. Build resilience. Life doesn't ask for your permission before it tests you. It doesn't wait for the right moment to challenge you. It simply arrives with setbacks, losses, failures, and moments that stretch you beyond your comfort. But Stoicism teaches us something powerful. Resilience is not about avoiding these moments. It's about how you meet them. It's about standing tall not because the storm passed, but because you learned how to dance in the rain. That's what building resilience really means, cultivating the ability to endure, adapt, and rise stronger, not in spite of adversity, but because of it. When most people think of strength, they imagine something hard, something unshakable. But true resilience is not rigid, it's flexible. It bends, but it doesn't break. It absorbs pressure and transforms it into purpose. And this is where Stoicism becomes more than just ancient wisdom. It becomes a survival strategy. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Life will happen, pain will come. What defines you is not what hits you, but how you respond. Imagine losing something important, a job, a relationship, your health, your sense of direction. The world around you may not pause to offer comfort. People may move on. The circumstances may seem unfair. But right there, in the silence that follows the loss, you face a choice. Will you crumble? Or will you rise? Even if it's slowly, even if it hurts? That decision, that moment of quiet determination, is where resilience is born. Marcus Aurelius offered a truth that still echoes centuries later. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's one of the most powerful Stoic ideas ever written. What this means is that obstacles aren't detours, they're the path. The hardship is the training ground. The failure is the lesson. The pain is the sharpening blade. If you're always trying to escape discomfort, you'll never grow. But if you learn to embrace it, to look it in the eye and say, "You're here for a reason," then even your darkest moments become your greatest teachers. Let's take a real example. Imagine someone gets fired from their job. They feel humiliated, unworthy, panicked, but instead of spiraling into blame, They pause. They take ownership of what they can. They update their skills. They reflect on what they truly want. They build something new, not because the world handed it to them, but because they built it themselves. From the ashes. That's resilience, not a clean journey, not without tears, but full of strength, growth, and fire forged through experience. The Stoics didn't teach us to be cold. They taught us to be composed, to feel deeply, but act wisely. They never said, "Don't feel pain." They said, "Don't be owned by it." Resilience is about learning to sit with your struggle without letting it define your identity. You can feel broken and still begin rebuilding. You can feel overwhelmed and still take one more step. You can cry and still choose courage. Seneca once wrote, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." That line changes everything. Your interpretation shapes your experience. If you see failure as the end, it will bury you. But if you see it as feedback, as redirection, as growth, it will elevate you. The way you frame your hardship determines whether it becomes a prison or a path. Another practice the Stoics recommended was premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Sounds dark at first, but it's actually a profound tool for building mental armor. Picture the worst-case scenarios. Not to scare yourself, but to prepare your mind. When the worst is imagined and accepted, you meet reality with clarity, not panic. You're not shocked when life throws punches. You're already grounded, already steady, already ready to respond. Let's talk about emotional resilience. We often think of strength as suppressing emotion. But Stoicism isn't about repression, it's about regulation. Emotions are not the enemy. Losing yourself to them is. Anger, fear, sadness, they'll all visit. The question is, do you act on them blindly? Or do you acknowledge them and choose your response with wisdom? Epictetus advised, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. In those words is freedom, the power to decide that no matter how loud your emotions scream, you remain the driver, not the passenger. Think of someone going through heartbreak. Instead of numbing, blaming, or rushing to fill the void, they sit with the pain. They journal. They grow. They focus on their goals. They treat themselves with compassion but keep showing up. That is strength. That is resilience in motion, choosing dignity over despair, discipline over distraction, growth over retreat. And what happens when you live this way? Over time, life still tests you, but you stop shattering. You stop running. You start trusting your ability to rise, not because it's easy, but because you've done it before. You've seen yourself walk through fire and come out wiser, humbler, fiercer. You no longer fear the storm because you've become the storm's equal. Building resilience isn't a one-time act. It's a habit, a mindset, a practice. It's found in the small daily choices. The workout you finish when you're tired. The uncomfortable truth you speak. The day you keep going when quitting feels easier. These aren't random acts. They're resistance training for your soul. And with every challenge you face and overcome, your self-trust grows. You begin to believe not that life will be smooth, but that you will be steady. That's the shift. That's what Stoicism helps you build, not the illusion of control, but the power of response. And that response, over time, becomes resilience. You don't need perfect conditions. You need strength of character. You don't need to wait for the world to be kind. You need to become the kind of person who knows how to walk through the fire and still hold their head high. Resilience isn't built by avoiding struggle. It's earned by facing it head on, rising from it, and becoming better because of it. So whatever you're going through right now, whether it's loss, fear, uncertainty, or failure, remember this: it's not happening to you. It's happening for you. And even if you don't see it yet, there's something in this moment, some lesson, some strength, some clarity, that's waiting to be discovered. Trust that, use it, build on it, and keep rising. Every obstacle is an invitation. Every hardship is a doorway. And every time you walk through one, you step deeper into your power. That's resilience. That's stoicism. And that's who you are becoming. 6. Embrace learning and curiosity. Confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about being brave enough to admit that you don't and still show up. Eager to learn. In the eyes of a Stoic, the mind isn't a finished product. It's a living work in progress. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment growth stops. True confidence comes not from pretending to be complete, but from the humble courage to remain open to ideas, to challenges, to feedback, and to change. And that's where the journey of learning and curiosity begins. The world may reward certainty, but Stoicism honors humility. The Stoics knew that the wisest people are often the ones who ask the most questions, not the ones who speak the most answers. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." That one sentence captures the essence of growth. When your cup is already full, when you assume you've figured it all out, nothing new can be poured in. But when you approach life with curiosity, with the mindset of a student, every moment becomes a classroom. Think about the people you admire, not because they shout the loudest, but because they carry a quiet depth. These are the people who aren't afraid to say, "I don't know." They're not pretending, they're learning, they're absorbing, and because of that, their confidence doesn't rest on performance, it rests on progress. That's what separates shallow bravado from true strength. Curiosity isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. Learning is more than collecting facts. It's about transformation. It's about exposing yourself to new perspectives, testing your assumptions, and letting the truth reshape you. The Stoics believed that the pursuit of wisdom was life's greatest task, not for the sake of superiority, but for the sake of alignment. To live wisely is to live with clarity, courage, and character, and none of those things grow without curiosity. Let's talk about failure. One of the biggest reasons people stop learning is because they're afraid of getting it wrong. But Stoicism turns that fear on its head. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." When you adopt the mindset of a learner, failure isn't the enemy, it becomes your tutor. Every mistake becomes data. Every misstep becomes insight. And the more you learn, the more capable and confident you become. Imagine someone starting a new path, learning an instrument, switching careers, beginning public speaking. At first, they feel awkward, unsure, exposed. But instead of retreating into shame or comparison, they stay curious. They ask questions. They observe those ahead of them. They make mistakes, but they don't quit. They embrace the journey. And before long, that initial discomfort turns into competence. That's the magic of learning. It builds the very confidence you thought you needed before you began. Curiosity also makes you resilient. When you're driven by curiosity, you stop fearing the unknown. You stop needing every detail to be planned before you take action. Instead, you develop a mindset that says, "Let's find out." That shift is powerful. It frees you from paralysis and perfectionism. It makes you agile in the face of change. And in a world that never stops evolving, curiosity becomes your superpower. Marcus Aurelius reflected deeply on this in his meditations. He reminded himself that life is brief, that time is fleeting, and that the pursuit of understanding is far more fulfilling than the pursuit of status or praise. He wrote, "In the life of a man, his time is but a moment, his body a prey of worms. His soul a whirl, life is a warfare. And a stranger sojourn, and after fame, oblivion." These aren't gloomy thoughts, they're grounding ones. They remind us that what truly matters isn't being right. It's being real. It's learning, adapting, and living with meaning. Learning doesn't always happen in formal settings. In fact, the most profound lessons often come from everyday moments, if you're awake enough to notice. A failed conversation, a challenge at work, a disagreement with a friend, a feeling of discomfort that won't go away. Each of these is an invitation to ask, what is life trying to teach me here? Curiosity turns these moments from frustrations into fuel, from obstacles into openings. And just like reflection strengthens awareness, learning strengthens courage. Every time you learn something new, you prove to yourself that growth is possible. You collect evidence that you're evolving, and that evidence builds trust in your ability to adapt. That's where real confidence is born, not from pretending to be unshakable, but from becoming someone who learns to stand tall no matter what life brings. Another overlooked gift of curiosity is connection. When you're genuinely curious, you listen more, you judge less, you approach others not with the need to correct, but with the desire to understand. That builds trust. It deepens relationships. It makes you a person others want to be around, not because you have all the answers, but because you value the process of discovery together. In that space, ego fades, humility leads, and growth accelerates. The Stoics also teach that knowledge is not enough. Learning is only powerful when applied. Wisdom must move through action. Ask yourself, how does what I've learned today show up in the way I live? Do I apply it to my decisions, my discipline, my conversations? When you move from consumption to application, knowledge becomes transformation. That's when learning turns into confidence, not just in what you know, but in who you're becoming. And remember, the most important knowledge you can pursue isn't always about the world. It's about yourself. The Stoics didn't separate learning from self-knowledge. In fact, they believed that to know yourself is the foundation of all other wisdom. What are your values? What are your habits under pressure? What drives you, scares you, motivates you? The deeper your self-awareness, the more centered you become. And from that center, you can handle anything. Curiosity keeps you humble. It keeps you open. It keeps you moving forward. It reminds you that no matter how far you've come, there's always more to explore, not because you're lacking, but because life itself is rich with layers. When you live with that mindset, confidence becomes your companion, not because you've reached the top, but because you've committed to the climb. So embrace the questions, seek the lessons, welcome the discomfort, and above all, keep your mind open, not just to the world around you, but to the possibilities within you. That's how the Stoics lived. That's how the strongest people grow. And that's how you build a kind of confidence that no title, no trophy, no applause could ever give you, because it's rooted in your own willingness to evolve. 7. Practice mindfulness and presence. In a world that never stops spinning, where every moment is packed with alerts, tasks, noise, and pressure, it's easy to feel like your mind is never really here. You're thinking about tomorrow's deadline while scrolling through yesterday's news. You're listening to someone talk, but already crafting your next reply. Your body's in the room, but your mind is somewhere else, and that disconnection slowly chips away at your clarity, your peace, and your confidence. But the Stoics had a powerful antidote: the art of being present. Not passively present, but mindfully alive in the moment. Not distracted, not anticipating, here, fully here, and in that stillness, they found strength. Practicing mindfulness isn't just about sitting in silence. It's about mastering your awareness. It's about learning to direct your attention with intention, instead of being dragged around by your thoughts like a leaf in the wind. When you're mindful, you start noticing, you start slowing down, you stop reacting and start responding. And that one shift, responding instead of reacting, changes everything. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." That's not just poetic, it's a command to anchor yourself in the only moment that actually exists. Because confidence doesn't live in the future, and it doesn't live in the past. It lives in the now. When you practice presence, you start to see how much energy gets wasted on what you can't control. Worrying about what might happen, regretting what already happened, spinning in endless loops of what if and if only. But Stoicism teaches that your power begins where your feet are. You can't rewrite yesterday. You can't predict tomorrow. But you can choose how to meet this moment. Right here, with clarity, with intention, and with composure. That's where peace begins. And from that peace, real confidence is born. Think about it. How often do your thoughts sabotage your calm? You're about to speak up in a meeting, and suddenly your brain starts racing. What if they judge you? What if you mess up? What if you're not good enough? Those thoughts don't come from the present. They're echoes from the past or fears about the future. But when you ground yourself, breathe, feel your body, connect with what's actually happening, you quiet the storm. You come home to yourself. And from there, your presence becomes your power. Seneca said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." That's modern life in one sentence. We multitask. We jump from screen to screen, conversation to conversation, thought to thought, and in doing so, we fracture our focus. We dilute our attention. We lose the ability to be. But the Stoics knew that greatness isn't scattered. It's focused. It's deliberate. It's rooted in the ability to show up, fully, consciously, for the task in front of you, no matter how big or small. Practicing mindfulness also sharpens your self-awareness. You begin to catch yourself in the act of distraction. You notice when your mind wanders, when your emotions surge, when your ego takes over. And instead of getting swept away, you breathe, you return. That return, again and again, is where strength is forged. Not by being perfect, but by coming back to the present. One breath at a time. Let's take a moment and imagine you're about to face a challenge, a big presentation, a crucial conversation, an unpredictable day. Your heart is racing, your thoughts are spinning, your inner critic is loud. But instead of spiraling, you pause, you center yourself, you breathe slowly, feel your body, and focus your attention on this moment. Not the outcome, Not the judgment, just the process. The presence. Suddenly, the fear softens. You feel grounded, capable. That's not magic. That's mindfulness. And it's available to you anytime you choose to return to the now. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And it's true. Most of our stress doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from what we think might happen. But mindfulness invites us to drop the mental noise and engage with reality as it is. Not worse than it is. Not better than it is. Just as it is. From that grounded awareness, we stop fighting shadows and start facing truth. And in doing so, we build the kind of confidence that isn't shaken by uncertainty. Because it's rooted in presence. Mindfulness also enhances the quality of everything you do. A mindful conversation is richer. A mindful walk is more peaceful. A mindful task, even something simple, becomes meaningful. When you give your full attention, you give your best energy. You feel less scattered, more aligned, and with that alignment comes a quiet power, because you're no longer divided. You're integrated, you're in control, and this practice doesn't require hours of meditation or perfect silence. It requires attention. That's it. Notice your breath, feel your steps, listen without planning your reply, eat without a screen, work without checking your phone every 2 minutes. These small shifts, these micro moments of presence, build a life that feels less chaotic and more intentional. They train your mind to return, again and again, to what matters. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Mindfulness is how you begin to take that power back. It's how you stop giving your peace away to distractions, to fear, to regret. It's how you become the calm in the middle of life's storm. Not by controlling the storm, but by learning to be still within it. Gratitude also grows from mindfulness. When you're present, you stop overlooking the small joys that surround you, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the taste of your favorite meal, the breath moving in and out of your chest. You stop waiting for happiness to arrive in the future and start finding it right here. And that gratitude becomes another pillar of confidence. Because it reminds you that even in uncertainty, you are supported, you are enough, you are here. There's a quiet heroism in being present, in choosing not to escape, but to engage, not to numb out, but to wake up. Every time you return to the present moment, you strengthen your foundation. You remind yourself that clarity lives here, that peace lives here, that power lives here. And from that awareness, your presence becomes a gift, not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. Mindfulness won't remove life's challenges, but it will change how you meet them. It will train your mind to be less reactive, more reflective, less anxious, more accepting, less scattered, more focused. And as that practice deepens, confidence becomes less about outcome and more about orientation. You stop measuring success by external results and start measuring it by internal alignment. You know you've done your part. You've shown up fully. You've stayed grounded. And that's what real self-trust is built on. So today, slow down, look around, breathe deep, step into the moment you're in, and meet it with presence, not pressure. This isn't a pause in your life, it is your life. And when you learn to live it one mindful moment at a time, you unlock a version of yourself that's not only calmer, but clearer, not only focused, but fearless, not only confident, but conscious. And from that place, There's nothing you can't face. 8. Have a clear vision. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who knows where they're going. Not someone who rushes blindly toward every opportunity, but someone who walks with intention, steady, focused, aligned. That's the essence of clear vision. It's not just about setting goals or making plans. It's about knowing your why. Knowing what matters so deeply to you that every decision, every action, every moment starts to orbit around that inner truth. In Stoic philosophy, this clarity isn't just useful, it's essential. Because when your vision is clear, your mind becomes calm, your choices become simpler, and your confidence becomes unshakable. Life is full of noise, distractions, expectations, temptations to follow paths that look impressive but feel empty. Without a clear vision, it's easy to get pulled in 100 different directions. You start chasing someone else's dream, measuring your worth by someone else's timeline, and waking up one day wondering how you ended up so far from yourself. That's what happens when you don't know what you're really living for. But once you do, once your vision locks in, everything changes. Because now you're not just moving, you're moving on purpose. Marcus Aurelius said, "People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting their time, even when hard at work." That line cuts deep. Hard work means nothing without direction. Activity means nothing without purpose. And talent, without clarity, can become a curse instead of a gift. That's why Stoics insist on inner vision, not to control the world, but to control how you show up in it. A clear vision gives your life structure. It becomes a compass that keeps you steady when storms come. Because let's be honest, there will be storms. There will be setbacks, detours, people who don't understand your path. But when you know what you're building, you stop chasing short-term comfort. You stop panicking when things get messy. You trust the process. You keep going, not because it's easy, but because you're anchored in something bigger than the moment. Clarity also saves you from indecision. When you have a clear vision, your yes becomes powerful and your no becomes non-negotiable. You stop wasting time on things that look good but don't feel right. You stop saying yes to things that cost you your peace. Because when you know what you want, you also know what you're willing to walk away from. That's not rigidity. That's self-respect. And that self-respect becomes the foundation of confidence. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One road leads to more money, more recognition, but it requires sacrificing your values. The other road is quieter, less glamorous, but it aligns with your purpose. A person without vision hesitates. They overthink. They seek permission. But someone with a clear vision doesn't need to be convinced. They know what matters. They know what's worth it. And they walk with clarity, even if the road is uphill. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the formula. First, decide who you want to be, what kind of life you want to live, what values you want to embody. Then act, without hesitation, without waiting for the perfect moment. Because when the vision is clear, the path, even if difficult, becomes inevitable. But clarity doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's cultivated through reflection, through journaling, through listening to your inner voice when the world is loud. The Stoics spent time daily examining their actions, thoughts, and intentions, not to judge themselves, but to stay aligned, to remind themselves what really mattered. That's what journaling is. It's not about documenting your life. It's about designing it. You sit down, pen in hand, and ask, what am I aiming for? Are my actions aligned with my ideals? Am I living in a way that honors the future I want to build? And if not, you adjust, gently, honestly, consistently. Over time, your vision sharpens, your distractions fade, your life begins to reflect your inner clarity. Another powerful tool the Stoics used was visualization, not of material success, but of virtue, of character, of purpose. They imagined the person they wanted to become, not to fantasize, but to internalize. They rehearsed their principles until those principles became instinct. They didn't just think about courage, they lived it. They didn't just admire wisdom, they practiced it. That's what vision does. It pulls your ideals into reality. And remember, your vision doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be about status or legacy. It just has to be true. Maybe your vision is to build a peaceful life, to raise a kind family, to live with integrity and creativity. That's more than enough. What matters is that it's yours, that it comes from within, not from the world's idea of success. When your vision is clear, comparison fades. You stop looking sideways. You stop measuring your timeline against someone else's. Because now, you're not running a race. You're walking your path, and that path may be slower, quieter, even invisible to others, but it's sacred to you. And that's what makes it strong. Let's ground this with an example. Picture a young creator who dreams of using their voice to inspire others. They aren't chasing viral fame. They aren't copying trends. They're simply focused on serving truth. Every video, every post, every word is crafted with care. It might take longer. The growth might be slower. But the alignment is real. And that alignment builds a kind of confidence that doesn't burn out, because it's fueled by purpose. Seneca said, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Without a vision, even good opportunities can become distractions. Even strong momentum can take you in the wrong direction. But when you have a destination in your soul, every step has meaning. Every sacrifice feels worth it. Every setback becomes part of the story. And in those hard moments, when nothing seems to be working, when doubt creeps in, your vision becomes your anchor. It reminds you why you started. It reminds you who you're becoming. It pulls you back from fear and into focus. That's the power of clarity. It doesn't remove the chaos, but it keeps you grounded in the middle of it. So if you're feeling scattered, unmotivated, or lost, don't chase more. Chase meaning. Sit with yourself. Ask what matters. Define your vision. Then live by it. Because once your inner vision is clear, your outer life begins to reflect it. And that kind of clarity is rare. It's magnetic. It's powerful. It's stoic. And it might just be the greatest gift you can give yourself. 9. Cultivate a positive mindset. Your mind is the lens through which you see the world. And the way you frame your reality determines everything, from how you feel to how far you'll go. Stoicism doesn't ask you to fake positivity or ignore pain. It asks you to reframe it, to challenge your perceptions, to choose empowerment over helplessness. A positive mindset in Stoic terms isn't about rainbows and blind optimism. It's about choosing to focus on what you can control, embracing failure as feedback, and walking through life with purpose and perspective. And once you understand this, positivity becomes more than a mood, it becomes a way of living. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That one line holds the key to emotional strength. Most people assume their mood is dictated by circumstance. They wake up feeling off because of the weather, someone's comment, a missed opportunity. But the Stoics taught that external events don't disturb you. Your interpretation of them does. What matters isn't what happens. What matters is what you tell yourself about what happens. And in that space between stimulus and response lies your power. Let's say you fail at something important. A project crashes. A relationship ends. A door closes. Your initial instinct might be to judge yourself, to spiral into shame or self-doubt. But if you stop, breathe, and reframe the moment, everything shifts. You begin to ask, what is this teaching me? Where is the growth? What new door might this be pointing me toward? That shift, from defeat to curiosity, from punishment to learning, is the heartbeat of a Stoic mindset. And it doesn't just restore your confidence. It multiplies it. Seneca wrote, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." And it's true, your mental framing either drains you or drives you. Reframing doesn't deny reality. It rewires how you engage with it. When you train yourself to look for lessons instead of loss, progress instead of pain, you begin to see that life isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. That doesn't mean every moment will be easy, but it means you'll never let a hard moment go to waste. This mindset isn't passive. It's a daily practice. It shows up in how you talk to yourself, in how you respond to setbacks, in how you choose your focus. It's in the way you catch your inner critic mid-sentence and replace it with a voice of truth. It's in how you see failure as a teacher, not a verdict. It's in how you meet stress with breath, discomfort with action, and uncertainty with resilience. Positivity, in the Stoic sense, is forged, not found. Imagine a moment where everything goes wrong. You're under pressure. You make a mistake, and your plans fall apart. You feel the sting of failure. But in that moment, you have a choice. You can let that moment define you or refine you. You can label it as a disaster or see it as a chapter. That ability to choose, to pivot, to reframe, is what builds true confidence. Not confidence that everything will go your way, but confidence that no matter how things go, you will grow. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That line becomes your armor. When someone criticizes you, you pause. You ask, is there something here I can use? When life delays your progress, you ask, what strength is this cultivating in me? When fear shows up, you don't run, you lean in and ask, what is this fear trying to protect me from? And how can I respond with courage instead? This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about making sure your response is grounded, intentional, and forward-moving. And sometimes, cultivating a positive mindset means turning your focus to gratitude, not for perfection, but for progress, for breath, for growth, for one more chance to try again. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to be grateful for even the smallest of blessings. When you wake up and choose to see what's working instead of what's lacking, you shift your energy. You stop fighting life and start flowing with it. And in that space, your confidence flourishes, not because life is easier, but because your mind is stronger. Let's talk about comparison. It's one of the quickest ways to poison a positive mindset. Scrolling through highlight reels, measuring your progress against someone else's success, it clouds your vision and corrodes your self-belief. But when you focus on your path, your values, your growth, you reclaim your joy. You stop asking, "Why not me?" and start asking, "How can I honor where I am and keep moving forward?" That's how you protect your peace. That's how you own your lane. And when the future feels uncertain, the Stoic positive mindset brings you back to the now. Because the future is imagined, but the present is real. The task in front of you is real. The effort you're giving is real. Confidence isn't about predicting the outcome. It's about knowing you're showing up fully. No matter what, that presence becomes your power. That focus becomes your fuel. Reframing also applies to how you see yourself. Instead of labeling yourself by your failures, "I'm not disciplined. I always mess up. I'm not cut out for this." You catch those thoughts and shift them. You start saying, "I'm still learning. I'm becoming stronger. I haven't mastered this yet. But I'm not quitting." That shift in language becomes a shift in identity. And over time, those small internal shifts lead to massive external transformation. Cultivating a positive mindset doesn't mean ignoring negativity. It means refusing to become it. It means choosing resilience over resentment, choosing action over excuses, choosing clarity over chaos. You face life head-on, not because it's smooth, but because your mindset is sharp. You step forward, even when it's dark, not because you're fearless, but because your inner light is strong enough to guide you through. This kind of mindset isn't built overnight. It's built one decision at a time. It's built every time you pause instead of panic, every time you rise instead of retreat, every time you choose growth over comfort. The Stoics weren't born calm or wise. They trained their minds, sharpened their thoughts, and practiced presence until it became who they were. And you can too. So start today. Catch the next negative thought and challenge it. Reframe that failure into a lesson. Speak to yourself like someone worth fighting for. And step into your life, not with fear, but with focus. Because when your mind is aligned with truth, strength, and meaning, your confidence doesn't need to be forced. It rises naturally, quietly, unshakably. That's the gift of a Stoic mindset. And it's yours to cultivate. 10. Develop leadership skills. True leadership isn't about status. It's not about titles, corner offices, or commanding a room with volume. In the eyes of the Stoics, real leadership begins long before anyone ever follows you. It begins inside, where self-discipline, integrity, and humility take root. Stoic leadership isn't performative. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the clearest, the calmest, the most anchored. It's about mastering yourself. Because until you can lead you, you have no business leading anyone else. And that principle alone separates momentary authority from lasting influence. Epictetus said it best, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's the core of Stoic leadership. Before you try to influence the world, ask, have I tamed my own impulses? Can I lead with clarity instead of chaos? With reason instead of reaction? The Stoics weren't obsessed with power. They were obsessed with self-governance. Because they understood that your presence as a leader carries weight only when it is backed by internal structure. People follow certainty, not ego. They follow steadiness, not spectacle. They follow leaders who lead from within. Imagine someone in a position of leadership, facing a crisis, a high-pressure decision, or a room full of disagreement, while others panic, react, or point fingers. The Stoic leader listens. They reflect. They breathe. They ask, what is in my control? What is the right thing to do? not the most popular? That pause, that ability to anchor in values instead of emotion, is what builds trust. Because leadership isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about staying centered long enough to ask the right questions, and being honest enough to act with integrity, even when it's difficult. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, wrote nightly reminders to himself not to be carried away by status, anger, or flattery. He was an emperor, but he never stopped training his mind to remain a servant of virtue. That's the Stoic paradox of leadership. The higher you rise, the deeper your humility must grow. A true leader doesn't lead to dominate. They lead to elevate. They don't use power to inflate the ego. They use it to protect, to serve, to inspire. Seneca wrote, "You must live for others if you wish to live for yourself." That line turns leadership on its head. It's not about getting others to serve you. It's about becoming someone worthy of serving them. Leadership is service, and service demands character. That means making hard decisions that are just, not easy. That means speaking the truth, even when it's inconvenient. That means holding yourself to a higher standard, not to impress others, but because you've chosen to live by a code. Let's talk about emotional mastery, because without it, no leadership lasts. A Stoic leader doesn't lash out under pressure. They don't get swept away by applause or destroyed by criticism. They stand where they are. They listen. They process. They speak when it's time, not to assert dominance, but to provide direction. That emotional stillness isn't detachment, it's discipline. It says, I control my mind, my words, and my energy, and in doing so, I can help others rise, not sink with me. Humility is another pillar of Stoic leadership. A real leader isn't the smartest in the room. They're the most willing to learn. They aren't threatened by new ideas, they seek them out. They don't need to prove they're right. They're committed to finding what is right. Epictetus warned against pride disguised as strength. A humble leader doesn't hide weakness. They embrace feedback. They grow publicly. They admit mistakes without shame because they know that leadership isn't perfection, it's progress. Leadership also means consistency. Not once, not sometimes, every day. Are you the same person behind closed doors as you are in public? Are your decisions aligned with your principles, even when no one's watching? The Stoics believed that character is revealed not in grand gestures, but in repeated actions. Your daily habits, your tone of voice, your way of listening. These things speak louder than any speech. And people feel it. They know when a leader is real. There's also power in restraint. In a world that rewards quick reactions, Stoic leaders think before they speak. They hold silence when emotions rise. They respond instead of react. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to wait for the right moment. That doesn't mean avoiding action, it means choosing the best action. Strategic, calm, aligned with reason. That kind of restraint is rare, but it commands more respect than any outburst ever could. Now imagine the impact of this kind of leadership, not just in a company, but in a family, in a team, in a friendship. When you lead with integrity, you give others permission to do the same. When you remain composed, others find their calm. When you own your mistakes, others feel safe enough to grow. Leadership becomes contagious, not through force, but through example. That's how cultures shift. That's how trust is built. That's how real transformation begins. A Stoic leader doesn't need applause to feel valuable. They don't crumble when challenged. They're rooted, like a tree in the storm, not because the world around them is peaceful, but because they've created peace within. That kind of leadership doesn't just build companies or movements. It builds people. It builds futures. It builds legacies that last longer than titles. And all of it starts from within. It starts with one person who chooses to lead themselves, moment by moment, decision by decision, breath by breath. That person could be you. You don't need permission. You don't need a role or a rank. You just need a decision to lead from your values, your clarity, and your strength. And in doing that, you become the kind of person others instinctively follow, not because you demand it, but because your life quietly proves it. That's Stoic leadership. Grounded, principled, resilient, not loud, but powerful, not proud, but purposeful, and in a world starving for real guidance. Leaders like that don't just stand out, they change everything. Be that leader. Train your mind, sharpen your integrity, serve with strength, and let your life lead louder than your words ever could. 11. Detach from outcomes, focus on effort, not results. Real freedom begins when you stop measuring your worth by results and start measuring it by your intention, your integrity, and your effort. In the Stoic worldview, confidence is not a product of success, it is a product of presence. A Stoic doesn't obsess over whether they win or lose. They ask one question: did I do my part? Did I act in alignment with my values? With clarity? With discipline? If the answer is yes, that's enough. And if you live from this place, your confidence becomes untouchable, no longer built on applause, but on self-respect. Epictetus said it clearly: we are disturbed not by events, but by the views we take of them. Think about that. The outcome isn't what creates your stress, fear, or doubt. It's your attachment to it, your belief that it has to look a certain way in order for you to be okay. When you detach from the outcome, you don't stop caring. You simply stop tying your identity and peace to something you cannot control. You shift your focus from perfection to progress, from external reward to internal alignment. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Imagine training for something important, a competition, an interview, a speech. You put in the hours. You show up prepared. You bring your full self to the moment. But then the result doesn't match your expectation. You don't get chosen. You lose. You're overlooked. The reactive mind spirals into self-doubt. But the Stoic mind stands firm and says, I did what I could. I held nothing back, and I will not let an uncontrollable outcome define who I am. That mindset is liberating, because in that moment, you take your power back. When you focus only on outcomes, you create a life of anxiety. Why? Because outcomes are always uncertain. You can give your best, and still things may not go your way. You can pour your heart into a project, and still not get the recognition. You can love deeply, and still face heartbreak. If your self-worth rides on these variables, you will always live in fear. But when you focus on effort, on what you bring, not what you receive, you reclaim control. You live on your terms. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful leaders in history, reminded himself every day to focus on his role in the grand theater of life, not the applause, not the reviews. He saw life as a duty to be fulfilled, not a performance to be judged. That's what detachment is. Not disinterest, but devotion without obsession. You do your work, not for outcome, but because it is right. That's the essence of Stoic confidence. You want to be truly confident? Then start asking, what is within my power? Your mindset, your preparation, your words, your effort. That is your domain. The rest, others' opinions, timing, luck, is not. And when you draw this boundary clearly, you stop wasting energy on things you can't predict or force. You give your all, and you walk away free. That freedom breeds clarity. That clarity breeds peace. We live in a world addicted to outcome. Followers, likes, results, rankings. But all of that is noise if your soul is not anchored. What if you could be proud of yourself without needing the scoreboard to validate it? What if your measure of success was your consistency, your courage, your alignment? That's the Stoic metric. It's quieter, it's deeper, and it lasts longer than any trophy ever could. Detachment is not giving up. It's giving your all without giving your peace away. It's not apathy, it's mastery. And it requires discipline. It requires catching yourself in the loop of worry and saying, this outcome does not own me. I'm here to give my best. And that is enough. Confidence grows every time you choose integrity over insecurity, action over anxiety, intention over outcome. Let's take this deeper. When you become obsessed with outcomes, you also become reactive to failure. You either avoid it, deny it, or drown in it. But when you detach, failure becomes fuel. It becomes feedback. It becomes your path to refinement. You begin to see setbacks not as proof of inadequacy, but as part of your evolution. This shift in perspective doesn't just build resilience, it builds inner peace. And here's something radical. When you stop chasing results, often, the results improve, because you're no longer gripped by fear or neediness. You show up cleaner, calmer, more focused. You think better. You act wiser. You're no longer trying to manipulate the outcome. You're mastering the moment. That presence is powerful, and people feel it. That's what makes your actions magnetic, not desperation, but detachment. Epictetus also taught that freedom comes from wanting less, not from settling, but from understanding what actually matters. The applause doesn't matter. The title doesn't matter. The opinion of strangers doesn't matter. What matters is that you are honest, that you are consistent, that you are committed, that you walk your path with discipline and grace. Let that be your standard, and let everything else fade into the background. When you detach from outcomes, you make room for deeper joy. Not joy that depends on things going your way, but joy that comes from knowing you're living fully, bravely, consciously. You no longer delay your peace for a future result. You anchor into it now. In your effort, in your growth, in your truth. That is the Stoic way. And it is not easy, but it is freeing. It asks you to stop clinging, to stop bargaining with life, to trust that your best is enough, and that whatever unfolds, you'll face it with strength. That's not a passive life. That's a powerful one, because your confidence doesn't rise and fall with the wind. It rises from within, from your discipline, from your presence, from your peace. So today, give your all, prepare like a warrior, show up with courage, and let go. Trust the process, trust your effort, and trust that who you're becoming matters far more than what you're achieving. Because in the end, the Stoics knew, your character is your destiny, not your outcome, your character. And when you lead with that truth, you'll find that letting go was never about losing control. It was about finding your power. 12. Serve a higher purpose. Live for something greater than yourself. There is a confidence that shouts, and a confidence that simply walks forward, steady and unshaken. The first comes from ego, the craving to impress, to dominate, to prove something to the world. The second flows from something deeper, purpose. The kind of inner power that doesn't need validation because it already knows it is here to serve. Stoicism teaches us that the highest form of strength is not just control over ourselves, but contribution beyond ourselves. And the greatest lives are not those that burn the brightest, but those that light the way for others. When your life is aligned with something bigger than your personal gain, fear begins to fade, because fear thrives on self-centeredness. What if I lose? What if they don't like me? What if I'm not enough? But when your focus shifts from ego to essence, from self to service, everything changes. You stop obsessing over image and start focusing on impact. You stop chasing attention and start becoming useful. That shift is not weakness, it is the foundation of true, quiet, unshakable confidence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee." This wasn't a poetic metaphor. It was a way of life. He believed that we are not isolated beings, but part of a collective rhythm. And when we forget this, we suffer. But when we remember, when we devote our actions to something greater, a cause, a mission, a truth, we gain a kind of clarity that no applause can give and no rejection can take away. Ask yourself, what are you living for? Not just surviving for, not just working for, but truly living for. Is it just the next achievement? The next dollar? Or is there a thread running deeper, a reason that ignites your soul? Even when things get hard, because make no mistake, they will get hard, and if all you have to hold onto is your ego, it will crumble. But if you are anchored to a higher purpose, you rise. Every setback becomes part of the service. Every failure becomes fuel for the mission. Serving a higher purpose doesn't always mean starting a movement or changing the world overnight. Sometimes, it's how you show up each day, with integrity, with courage, with kindness. It's how you treat people who can't give you anything in return. It's the quiet ways you choose to make the world a little better. Not because anyone is watching, but because you believe it matters. That is the essence of Stoic purpose. You don't do it for glory. You do it because it is right. And doing what is right, even when no one sees, builds a core of self-respect that no failure can shake. The irony is, when you stop obsessing over how you appear, and start focusing on what you give, you become magnetic. People feel that energy, because it's rare. In a world full of performance, authenticity stands out. In a world full of noise, clarity speaks volumes, and clarity comes from purpose. When you wake up every day knowing why you're here, not just for yourself, but for something sacred, your confidence transforms. It no longer needs to be loud. It becomes solid, grounded, unstoppable. There's a reason the great Stoics didn't write about popularity or fame. They wrote about justice, about wisdom, about duty, because they understood that true power comes from alignment. When your values match your actions, when your mission matches your habits, when your life reflects your beliefs, that's when you unlock confidence that doesn't break under pressure. Because it's not built on how the world sees you. It's built on how you see yourself, and how you serve what matters most. Think of a warrior on the battlefield, not one who fights for ego, but one who fights to protect, to defend, to serve. That warrior moves with purpose, not panic, with precision, not desperation. Their strength is not in brute force, but in clarity of why they are there. That's you. That's the energy you carry when you dedicate your life to something greater. Whether it's your family, your craft, your faith, your community, or simply the pursuit of wisdom, when you serve a higher purpose, your steps become sacred. Confidence built on personal gain will always shake when life tests you. But confidence built on service, on mission, on devotion to something timeless, will carry you through every storm. Because it's not just about you. And that's where your real power lives. In the ability to get out of your own way and ask, how can I help? How can I elevate? How can I leave this place better than I found it? This is not passive spirituality. This is fierce clarity. This is the mindset that says, I will not waste this life chasing shallow things. I will live it wide awake, fully committed, radically generous, fearless, not because I am invincible, but because I am devoted to truth, to excellence, to service. That is Stoic power, and it doesn't burn out because it is fueled by something eternal. If you've ever felt lost or unsure, return to this. What do I stand for? What will I sacrifice for? Who do I become when I live not for approval, but for purpose? The moment you answer that, you begin to walk with certainty. Not because life is predictable, but because you are. And that kind of person, the one who serves something sacred, becomes the kind of person others trust, follow, remember. So rise, not for applause, not for status, but for something that matters more. Serve a cause, a people, a principle that makes you proud to be alive. Let your life be your message. Let your actions be your offering. And let your confidence be the quiet flame that lights the path for yourself and for everyone who walks beside you. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you become through discipline, through clarity, through facing your fears and refusing to be ruled by them. The Stoics didn't just teach us how to think, they taught us how to live. And in these 12 lessons, we've seen that true, unshakable confidence has nothing to do with arrogance or perfection. It comes from alignment between your values, your actions, and your purpose. You gain strength when you focus on what you can control. You gain clarity when you silence the noise of the world and listen to your own principles. And you gain freedom when you stop chasing validation and start living with intention. Every single practice we've explored, from detaching from outcomes to serving something greater than yourself, is a building block. Together, they don't just shape how others see you, they transform how you see yourself. And that's the real win. So if these lessons spoke to something inside you, if even one idea sparked a shift in your thinking, don't keep it to yourself. Share this message. There's someone out there who needs it as much as you did. If you found value here, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell to stay connected with timeless wisdom that actually works. Your journey doesn't end here. This is just the beginning. Walk forward, grounded, focused, and fiercely alive. You were born to walk with calm strength. Now go and live like it.